a rough morning, so apologies. We're moving along. So we've got the second half of the first week today. We're going to get into chapter 1 of the text. It's not all that interesting, actually, but if you like PowerPoint slides, I don't like to read them to you, but some people like to have them. So I've got out here all the book PowerPoints, the publisher ones here. If you want to use those as kind of cliff notes for yourself, that's fine. Ideally, you're doing more than this and actually opening the book too, though. But this is at least the highlights for you here. It'll have at least the content sections for you. So I've got those. I don't use PowerPoint because if I put something on the screen, you just start reading it. And as much as we like to imagine we're good at multitasking, we're not good multitaskers. It is really hard to read something and listen at the same time. So that one's out there. And then there's a syllabus quiz I'd like you to take just to make sure that you actually read it or paid attention when I was talking about it. It's just 8 questions. It should be free points here for you. So we can look at it real fast. This is also part of what I use. Yeah.
So I ordered like the book and it's coming in like, it said 17th.
17th.
We actually need it.
Well, we got a quiz starting today on it.
Yeah, I mean, I like it first.
You'll probably be fine because chapter 1's really boring. But 17th? That's like, who doesn't do 2-day shipping nowadays?
What?
Who doesn't do 2-day shipping nowadays?
I don't know why. I would like it. It was off Amazon Prime too.
Oh, that's weird.
Is the 4th edition okay?
It'll get you close. It doesn't have the same Java graphical user interface stuff, the Java FX stuff we're going to do. So it just doesn't have the chapter at all on that. But there's just one chapter. And we're going to do a little bit of stuff with Java FX after anyway. So you'll probably be fine. Yeah, if you have the 4th, that should be okay. And if you need to reference the book, I'm sure someone here, you could ask when I'm not in the room if there's a place you could find it somewhere, a PDF. So just ask around after. All right, ways you can contact me to get all the tools you need for class. You can watch lectures, your different choices here, attending SI sessions. I mentioned you get an extra point on the weekly quizzes, I think. Sometimes I mention it, sometimes I forgot to mention it. Okay, good. So if you attend it, you can get an extra point on that quiz. It'll take you to 11 out of 10 points if you do get all the rest of them right. Late work is not taken. For office hours, virtually here on Discord or Zoom, we can book a 15, I can zoom that in a little. 15, 30-minute meeting with me. At that time, I'll just block that off of my calendar. We can chat. Aside from those meetings, I'm at my desk sitting there waiting to talk with you folks, so you can get a real quick response, right? Faster than usual. Chat about general technology, anything interesting, right? I like chatting, talking about tech stuff. I'm a big giant nerd, or games too. All of the above, right? That one's free points. So anything you want to do there for office hours, but do fill out this when to meet link for me. I'm going to find the time that has the most people meeting there. So I've got to fill 5.5 hours of office hours or so of like standing office hours that I'll pick and that work for the most people. And then we can also meet by appointment if those times don't work for you. College courses take about 2 hours outside of class for every hour in class. So this being a 4-credit class, you should expect 8 hours of reading and studying and homework and other assignments, those sorts of things, outside of the 4 hours we spent here together. So think about when you're going to do that, kind of block it off as a calendar style and tell me when you're going to do it. This just helps get you into the mindset of, okay, this is the time I'm going to spend doing this. Because if you just say, I'll get to it at some point, it doesn't usually work. And then people start missing assignments and bad stuff happens. And the problem with this is everything builds on itself. So if you didn't get the stuff from the first week or the second week, the stuff in the third week's not going to make much sense because it uses all the stuff from previous chapters. So it's real important to stay caught up. And then the last one here, this is part of what I turn into the dean if I catch people cheating. They acknowledge the policy and say they understand it. So if you don't understand it, please don't submit this yet and ask questions. Right? Please let me know what's not clear about that. But again, this is part of the documentation I have to send to my dean if people cheat and fail. So that's the syllabus quiz. It should be free points for you. And then after today, I'll post the Chapter 1 quiz. It's just 10 quick questions on the Chapter 1 content. So we'll talk about Chapter 1, and then we're going to talk about using GitHub today as well. So GitHub is a hosting provider of the Git source control tool. So our friend Linus Torvald, who's the founder of Linux, got sick of the source control tools that were available and said he could do better, and he invented and wrote Git. So Git is open source. You can use it anywhere. GitHub is the provider of Git services and hosts central repositories online, and there's a couple cool things you can do on their website, which are a lot of fun. So Git itself, in terms of a source control tool, its job is to manage code. Right? So when people are working on software, they put the code and it's managed by, tracked by Git. GitHub makes a lot of money selling the services to organizations so that you can host your code on their servers and synchronize from anywhere in the world. And they do some other cool stuff on the web. So Git by far is the industry standard. The last I looked, I think the data was like from 2019 or something. Probably 60 to 70% of all projects out there that they surveyed are using Git as a source control tool. It's a little weird sometimes, but it's worth starting to practice with for sure, because it's definitely a standard tool out there. So we'll practice with that. So our first assignment is going to be essentially the Hello World program we did on Monday with a little bit more from Chapter 1, and we're going to make sure we can get it into the Git source control tool on GitHub, and I'll walk you through all that. So before we leave today, you should be done with it and get the points for, that's project 0. So we'll have that out there. I'm going to fire up NetBeans. This always takes a minute here, and we'll talk about the introduction to Java. Some of the history stuff is really boring, not all that interesting. I'm sorry? Oh, okay, cool. All right. So one of the cool things about Java is that it was designed to be multi-platform and not be a Windows-specific tool or a Mac, Apple-specific tool or Linux. It wasn't really, it's been around, but wasn't super popular. But you could run a Java application on any sort of device, because the way that Java works is it actually runs in a virtual managed environment. So it's a managed runtime that the code executes in. So the fine folks at Java or now Oracle, they spend a lot of time making sure that you can install a Java runtime environment on all sorts of different devices. They used to advertise billions of devices. I don't think that's as impressive as it used to be, or it doesn't sound quite as impressive as it used to be. But if you can get the Java runtime environment installed on a device, you'll be able to run Java code. And it supports Mac, Windows, Linux. Essentially, Android phones run Java. There's some weirdness happening there with the lawsuit between Google and Oracle. But essentially it runs Java on Android phones, so you can run stuff on mobile phones, you can run stuff on IoT devices, depending on the device. Maybe not all of them support Java, but it's very easy to take one program and run it anywhere, which is really cool. So it used to be, with older languages, you had to target your application to this specific machine and this specific build, sometimes even, depending on what processor it had. So back in 1996, Java version 1 came out, and I don't actually know why it's called Java. There's a story there somewhere that someone wanted to name it something else, but I like it because I like coffee. Couple different versions or flavors of Java. There's a standard edition, there's an enterprise edition, and a micro edition. The standard is the standard one. Enterprise lets you do additional things with web applications. So if you do continue on and do the web systems development course, we do PHP and Java development for doing back-end web server stuff. We use the enterprise edition. It's a lot of fun. Different operating systems and Android. It is an object-oriented language. So this is slightly newer. It's really hard to say new nowadays since this was around in the 90s. But the way programs used to run is they would start at the top and go to the bottom, and that was it. With object-oriented programming, we can have a little more flexibility about how we design our programs and how we write them, the ways that they interact with each other. It's not going to make a lot of sense till we get to that chapter, but it was designed to be an object-oriented language, which is like C++ is an object-oriented language. Just C is not object-oriented. So C++ took C, built on it, and made it an object-oriented language. So you could do all sorts of fun stuff with C++. C# is an object-oriented language. Python is object-oriented. It doesn't necessarily have to be, depending on how you want to use it, but that's another great language. Most of our applications, I think I mentioned, are these console applications. So when you hit run, oh, not this one. I had my other one. I think I actually deleted it too. It just spits out here a bunch of text, right? And either the terminal or command line or PowerShell, whatever you want to call it here, it just spit text out at you. There's no buttons to click on, right? It's not graphical. Most of what we're going to do is that until we get to the JavaFX, all of our graphical user interface applications. Oh, just you get some text here. These are not all that fun. There's definitely some powerful tools out there that are command line based, but for us, it's just way more involved to do the other stuff. So we're going to start slow with these before we get to do more interesting programs with buttons and things to click on and stuff to type into. So it's all just here at the console. Other things you can do with Java, I mentioned the web system development class. You can write a web server or backend, run it in Tomcat using Java. So you can use an open source web server and program it in Java to do anything you want to do web-wise. Mobile applications, so there's a lot of fun things you can do, different flavors of Java programs. So let me start up a new one here actually. This will take you through it. So we're going to do it once as a throwaway project, and then I'll show you the GitHub thing, and we'll do it a second time in the GitHub repository folder. I'll show you how to make. So we'll do it twice. So if it doesn't work the first time, don't sweat it too much. But I'm just going to make just a project here on my desktop again to throw away.
Are we opening a new one?
So we're going to make a new Java project. Yep. So it's just file, new project. Yep. So file, new project, and we use Java with Ant, Java application. Yep. So I'm just going to put it on my desktop because we're going to throw this one away in a minute. We'll just call it Hello World again. All right, and everything we're going to do for the first bunch of chapters starts inside of this public static void main string square braces args parenthesis curly brace. So here's the opening curly brace, and here's the ending curly brace. If you click on either one of them, it'll highlight the other one for you, just as a little visual clue, which is nice. So we're going to do everything inside of those set of curly braces. So we're going to delete this line, this to do, that says, please put your code here. And we're going to write everything inside of there. You can leave everything else alone. It's not going to hurt anything to have all these other comments here. So we're going to start with this one. And inside of here, we're going to have the computer talk to us. And then there's a tool built into the Java library that lets you capture input from the keyboard. So if someone types something in, we can go get the thing that they typed. Right? We don't need to reinvent the wheel, do it ourselves. There's a library built in for it, for Java. So to output something, again, the shortcut is SOUT and then tab, or system.out.println parenthesis quote end parenthesis semicolon. Right. It is case sensitive, so capital S system or just SOUT and then hit tab will autocomplete that. That's a shortcut because we do this all the time, printing stuff out. We did that on Monday, right?
Yeah.
Right, cool.
Wait, it didn't work for me.
So SOUT
Tab.
and then tab. So as soon as you get that, it should suggest lowercase for this one, for the shortcut. Capital S if you're typing it out yourself. We're inside the set of curly braces that start public static void main string args open curly brace. but before the closing curly brace.
Maybe typing it again and doing it like right after. It might be one of those types of styles.
Yeah, if you like come back to it, it's not gonna have it. Yeah, it's gotta be kind of quick to hit the tab there. So we're just gonna say hello there, and maybe we'll ask, what's your name? Right, so instead of hello world, it will just ever so slightly different here. We'll just say hello, what's your name? And anything that goes inside of quotes is going to get spit right out to the screen for us. So this here is a string of characters, right? Just a bunch of characters put together in a quote here. So in Java, when you're dealing with text, it's considered a string. It's because it's a string of characters. You can get an individual character, but it's really obnoxious to spit things out one character at a time. So we want to use a string of characters, a bunch of them. Here's just a block of text. Then to get the user's input, we're going to use a tool from the Java library. It's called Scanner. So capital S, Scanner. And now the book does a terrible thing, and I'll make fun of him for it, but so this is the type that we're using. What comes after this is up to you. You can call it anything you want. It's called a variable name. So we get to pick names for the piece of information we're storing in our program. In this case, we're going to store a scanner in our program here for us to use to get some keyboard input. The book calls it SC. It makes me sad, but that's okay. So scanner is part of the Java library that we're going to use so we can get keyboard input. So it's how we can get whatever the user types in. Yeah.
My S out isn't working.
So you got to do it kind of quick. So maybe put in the new line, do SOUT and tab.
S. Then tab.
Yep.
It's still not working. It was working on Monday.
It shouldn't need a dot. It's SOUT, and then it should come up with.
Yeah, like none of this stuff is full.
Are you inside of the curly braces?
Yeah, I'm inside.
Oh. Let me come see real quick. That's interesting. No, we don't get lowercase. There we go. Yeah,
You can look at that the first that I'm going to slowly make the class to see what will happen. You see the thing up top?
No,
tool?
not. We're just typing this in or finish typing it.
And then options,
Yeah.
appearance, look and feel. Nope. I went for
the dark mode?
Yeah. Changing the entire thing will require you to restart the typing stuff.
Yeah, the dark mode's really nice. This one's not quite as pretty as the Darkula, but you don't need to install any plugins for it. All right, so we got Scanner. Yeah, so it's upset with it right now because it doesn't know the line's not done. It says a semicolon expected. Okay, it should be upset with that, but it's okay. We're going to keep going. So we're going to say Scanner SC, and then we use the equal sign. This here is called the assignment operator. So it doesn't say, does this thing equal this thing on the left and the right? It's not math class. So we're saying, take the thing that's on the right and save it over here on the left. So we're going to save something as a type of scanner. We're going to call it SC. What we're going to save is a new scanner, and then a set of parentheses. So new is a keyword in Java that's telling it, hey, I want to make one of these objects. When you say a new scanner, inside the set of parentheses, it's system.in with a capital S. And then the whole thing gets a semicolon after the parentheses. And it's probably still going to be upset with you, and that's okay. So we want to say scanner SC, so this is the type of object it is. This is my name for it, equals a new scanner given system.in. So system.in is the standard system input. That's our keyboard input for now. So scanner can do some other really cool things. It can, but we'll get there later. So right now we're just going to use the standard system input. Yeah. Equals. So is that coming out fuzzy? Yeah, an equal sign. So that's the assignment operator. Oh, okay. Let me see. The projector doesn't like my HD display very much. Let me crank this up to like 32. Yeah, does that look more like an equals now?
Is it okay that all my stuff is like a red line running?
Yeah, it's going to be upset for a second. So if you hover over where it's red, it usually gives you a message. And you can't see that from here, but it says cannot find symbol. So that's Java telling you it doesn't recognize it. It doesn't know what it is. So one of the really cool things about Java and other modern programming languages is they have a huge built-in library of tools. The problem is they don't give them all to you automatically, because when you went to take your program and run it somewhere, you would have to include all of those tools. It'd be really big. So we get to pick and choose. So what we can do, you come over, there's this little light bulb over here on the line numbers here. If you click that, NetBeans likes to be helpful. Sometimes the light bulb is really, really helpful, and sometimes it's absolute garbage. It just does horrible things. So don't always click it and assume it's doing the right thing. In this case, our option here, the first line says add import for java.util.scanner. That's the right thing. So if you click that, it doesn't look like it really did anything, but if you scroll up, it added this line up above. So you can type this out by hand if you want to use scanner every time. It has to happen above this public class thing. I just let NetBeans do the typing for me, again, because I am lazy in the best way. It's going to appear above that. Yeah, so you don't want to type it in yourself unless you scroll all the way up. So it should have package, and then it should have this import line if you do the light bulb. And then those red lines should go away. But now you'll notice there's still a thing here. It's underlining it in yellow. So yellows are warnings. And it's warning about being called SC. And if you hover over that, it says variable SC is never read. This is NetBeans trying to be helpful. It's saying, hey, dummy, you made this thing called an SC and you never did anything with it again. Yeah. All right, I can come look in a second. So this one, don't use the light bulb hint. This will just turn off that warning, which you probably don't want. This is actually generally pretty helpful. If you make something and you never use it again, we probably have a typo somewhere, or you didn't need to make the thing. So if you say, hey, I need a scanner, and you never use it, you didn't need to make it in the first place. So that's a really helpful hint. Yeah? So this is part of the Java library. We're going to use it in a minute. So this makes it ready for us to use so that we can read something from the keyboard input.
Oh, it makes the Java library available to us?
Yep, it uses the scanner class in the Java library and gets it all ready for us to use. Yep. Is it still giving you a red line? This is the class in the Util Library. There's a utility library, and we're just using the scanner portion of it here. Just that one class. And this is the fun thing with object-oriented programming. We can say, hey, I want to use this little piece here. It's designed to be reusable, which is a lot of fun. And we'll start writing our own components that are not really reusable, but if we really wanted to, we could use them again in other places. It's really hard to make something, like your first semester programming, that you'd want to use more than once. But we're going to use classes anyway. Were you able to get rid of that red line for scanner? All right, cool. So we've got that. So I'm going to go down a couple more lines. Yeah. Is it still upset? All right, let me see. We'll get it working. So you're outside of the set of curly braces. So you see this curly brace here. Okay. This closing one matches with this one here. So it's going to be inside those two set of curly braces. So just add a couple new lines. Just enter a couple times. And then grab that and put it up a line. leave the curly brace, but take your scanner line, and copy everything after that. Move it up the line. You can cut it. You can left click cut, or right click cut. You can go line facing. B paste, capital S scanner each time. Now you should take the light bulb in and click the import. Yeah, import. Cool. That should be good.
Okay. It's mine also.
Do we have the lens scanner? Oh, it looks like I can support it. Insert it like capital S scanner on the second.
Is that like the pocket channel piece?
Yeah, it's got to be made by any board ball, but it should be. Awesome.
It's still red. Yeah, it's still red. Is it?
Oh, capital S for 68.
Still red.
Semicolon at the end of the line. About end of the line. All right, now it's not red anymore, right? It's red, or is it just kind of yellow? Let me see. Let me hover over there. Nope, that's fine. So it's just the warning. All right, and then once we've got a scanner, if you want to get the user's input, we need to tell Java we want to save it somewhere. So what happens behind the scenes is pretty cool. Again, Java runs in this virtual machine, a Java runtime environment. And what that does, so this is called the JVM. It goes out and asks your operating system, so your OS, whether or not it's Windows or Mac or Linux or whatever it happens to be. It says, hey, I need a place in memory to store something. And your operating system says, oh, sure, my job is to give you memory to run programs. It says here, you can store it at, and now memory addresses are always done in hexadecimal for some reason. So they start with an X, and then they include the letters A, B, C, D, and E, and F, because it's in base 16. So you get 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then A is 10, B is 11, C is 12, D is 13, E is 14, and F is 15. Doesn't really matter much at all, but just you're going to see the letters there. So you might say like, hey, store it at 72 FB. We could care less, but that's a memory address of where Java then can go store that string of text. Because we're going to have the user type something in. Whatever they type in, it's going to say, oh, sure, I can store it here. And any of the letters, so if I type in Eric, it'll put Eric there for me. Later on, when I want to go use it now, I'm going to have a name for it. So I'm going to say, hey, Java, I want to use whatever's stored here in memory. It'll go grab whatever's here and spit it back out in my program for me. So I can tell Java, hey, I want to store something that's a type of string. So again, you always do type first and then a variable name for it. So we're saying, hey, I want to store a string. It's capital S string. And then we're going to give it a name. So this was scanner. We called it SC. This is a string. How about we call it name, because it's going to store my name. These are called variable names. You get to pick the name. It could be ASDF. Java could care less what this is. The names here for things are for us programmers so that we know what it represents. So good naming conventions mean it's a meaningful name that when you read it, you know what it's doing. It should kind of describe itself. So we're going to say, hey, I want a string for name, and I'm going to assign it a value of. Again, it's not equals. A lot of times I'll say equals because it's the equal sign. We're saying assign this string name the value of whatever's here on the right. And what we're going to do is we're going to take that SC, you say SC, and then use dot. And it should suggest a whole bunch of things to you. So these are all of the things that scanner can do. And it can do a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah? Okay. So sc dot, and we want to say, I want the next line. So next line with the capital L, and then a semicolon at the end. So semicolons in Java mean do the thing. It's saying, here's the end of my command. I've given you a command, go ahead and do it. Yeah?
What that means again, string name.
So string is the type of data that we're storing, and name is how I'm going to reference it here on out in my program. So anywhere else in my program, I can say name, and it's going to go say, oh, you want this thing over here in memory, whatever I've stored for you. So it represents...
What's your name?
So we have a string here, but we didn't save this in memory anywhere. We just spit it out to the console. By saying, I want a string called name, this is telling Java I want to save it in memory so I can use it later. So-
Name, or is the name the word you use?
So name here
Whatever.
is my variable to reference it and to say, this is what I'm talking about. So this way I can use it later in my code.
Also, for instance, string is there, and name is
So
what you use.
it'll have the value of whatever we typed in. Yep, and I'm going to call it name everywhere else in my program. The value is using scan or whatever we typed in. We don't know what it is, yeah? All right, yeah, we can look in a second. All right, let me do the next part and then I'll come around. So after we assign whatever they've typed into name, it's stored in memory. Now, memory is considered volatile. It's really quick, but if the computer loses power, it goes away. We've not actually saved anything to a file on our disk that you can open up later. So memory is really nice because it's fast, but as soon as the program stops, it's going to go away. So we're only keeping it around as long as my program is running. And most of the time, that's all we care about. Later on, we'll get to saving things out to disk so we can get them between runs. So after we have that, we're going to do that print line again, SOUT tab, or system.out.println. And now, in here, everything you put inside the set of parentheses is going to try and get spit out to the console. So we want to take our own string, we're going to say, hi there. And then we also want to include the name that they gave us. But I don't want to say, hi there, name, because that's all inside of the actual literal characters that are going to get spit out. This will just say, hi there, name. It won't give me the value that was stored by whatever the user typed in. So I don't want name inside the quotes. So I'm going to say, hi there, and then I'm going to use the plus sign here. It's not addition when you deal with strings. If you have a string and you take another string and you add them together, it just takes them and just smushes them here. The technical term for that is concatenation. It takes one string, concatenates another onto it. Looks like a plus sign. So you can say, hey, hi there, plus, and then I do name not in quotes. And you notice it stays here in white. So hi there is in the yellow or whatever color your strings look like, where name is in white here. And if I click on it, it's going to highlight it up above on this other line. So here's the variable. So this is whatever I call it here, name. And so whatever value was stored by typing in here, when I ask for it right here, it's going to go get it out of memory and give me whatever we've typed in. So I'll make sure it works for you in just a second. Let me run it and show you. I'm going to use the little play button here to run the project. All right, we get hello there, what's your name? Right, this is what we typed in up here. And now it just sits and waits. It doesn't look like it's doing anything. You've got to come down to this output section, and usually you have to click in there. See, now I have the little blinking cursor. Is that too low there? Just barely. It's a weirdly low projector here. But this room is so much nicer than the F building rooms. We got so much more space, and usually the air conditioning works.
It says that one or more of my projects with power repairs.
Okay, so it's upset about something. We'll look in just a second. But if it's running, it just sits and waits for me to type something in. So anything I type in here, so if I type in fuzzy pants and I hit enter, it says, hi there, fuzzy pants. Because anything that I typed in is going to get grabbed by this next line command, stored here, I'm going to call it name. So what's cool is every time you run it, it is variable. It's different because whatever the user typed in is what I'm going to use. So if I type in Eric Chernesky, I get, hi there, Eric Chernesky. So whatever they've typed in, we're going to get just right back out. And it's not very interesting that we're just taking the thing they typed and giving it right back to them. but we're working on it. We're going through our very first program here. So you should be able to get their name back out. All right, so let me walk around, help folks with whatever's not working there, and then we're going to look at using GitHub. So if you've got a second now and it's working for you, go to github.com and make a free account. Please don't pay for anything. It's sort of an industry norm nowadays if you apply for a programming job to give people your GitHub URL. Like, so mine's github.com/Eric Czarneski. So this is your username, and it will show all the things that you do. If you have any public work, so you can show off class projects. If you work on open source projects, which you can't yet because you just started, it's okay. Don't feel bad about that. But it's pretty common to give your GitHub username when you apply for jobs. So it doesn't have to have your name in it, but it probably shouldn't be fuzzy pants, right? So just keep that in mind as you're making a username. It doesn't need to be your real name, but something that's not ridiculous is probably a good bet there for you. All right, so I'm gonna make a free account. We'll use that in just a minute here. Let me make sure this works for everybody. So go ahead. So it doesn't like this one here. So this is system.in. Yep.
I'm guessing. Yeah, it says
that's it.
exceeded a secondary rate limit. So I'm guessing all of these computers go the same way. So I think they all feed for the same thing. It's just like slow. I was down with that.
Cool. Yep. So because you just have SOUT here, it's really confused. So just wait that for the letter there. Yep. And keep going. Okay. And then, so now it's happy with that one there. Down here, these ones need to be quotes. Let's see if you've got two apostrophes.
Okay, I'm guessing it's
So,
just
and then all these need before this
full
privilege.
load of traffic.
So if you can just delete the paragraph, so
the
we put it
ones
back in lower.
on the same network.
We'll go down a couple more lines. Just like arrow down a couple lines. Keep going. Keep going. Right, and then put another paragraph back in. We'll do the shift closing paragraphs here. Yep. Cool. Right, and then over here, this system output line doesn't look quite right. And this next line is a capital L. The system.out.println, and then another period. Okay, and then is that too on? Right, it's a little hard to see from your shoulder here. Okay, it should be okay, and now it's upset that these need to be quotes, not apostrophes there. So these two marks we have here, just delete those ones out. Yep, and put in quote signs. That's a shift. Okay, and then replace that there. The two marks you have there. Just out that. Print L, no I. Cool. I think that took care of all those. Let's see if it won't run now. So cancel, sorry. Didn't work. Is that a capital L for line? That's fine. Yeah. Yep, capital L for line. Okay, now it's fine. Oh, so just waiting for us. So you'll come down in here, folks. Type in your name. Yeah, and your name. Enter. And anything you type in, it's going to spit right back out for project. Okay. Anything you type in, it's going to. Oh, I'm just skipped up there. So that is our like our. Yeah, it can be. It just you don't need to ignore. So just going to use a semicolon at the end here. So if you hover over it, between that, see that. Semicolon is separate. Sometimes
Personalization.
you want to have it actually here. Just and then that's
Association.
I think it's exciting. Kind of run. Let's just make you know. You can get whatever you want.
Oh, so they can use it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's going to pick anything that's like this, and we're going to save it, and we're going to call it, we're going to do the data. Whatever they have in that file, we're going to store it, and we're going to reference it, calling it.
Oh, these people.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I can create it.
Anything that they can. Just put it right back out. So build it seven better than it gets space. The finance, and you speak back there, just going to get it right there. Hi there, and get space.
Where is the space?
After this, inside the bookstore,
Mhm.
if you want to,
Oh,
you know, like,
that's
out of
the
the
inside. Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah. That's okay. So this needs to be inside the sort of braces. So just come up here and add a couple more lines. Before that. Or that, we take your website. And these things. Cool. And you drag it out or something like and so let's see that next one. The question is very capital L. Capital L. And then we'll set parentheses, and close, and then a semicolon here. So that who's going to ask you when you're running it, make one video. It will store it in there. Yeah. So. No, it's so. That's okay. This one happens on others. And you do by hand. So import. And it's Java.util. Capital S. Try not to see if it goes. Click down the end. I'm not sure why I didn't recognize that. That's really weird. You going? Okay. All right, so let me set up the Project 0 assignment here in D2L real quick. So this is just going to make sure all the tools work for you here. 0. Now we're off next Monday, so we need this done before next Wednesday's class, before we start, to make sure all the tools work. You should be able to get it done before we walk out of here. It'll just take us another 5 minutes or so. Grab this, project 0, and projects. I'm going to put in a rubric, and then there's a link to this that'll make your repository. Give me just a second. All right, so you'll click this little link here, and I'll show you what that looks like. Oops, I gotta add the rubric. So typically with these programming assignments, I'm going to give you a rubric for all of them so you know how you get the points. So if it doesn't do the thing, doesn't have that feature or that functionality, there's no points there. And if it does do it, if it's complete, you get the point for it. There is occasionally partial credit, like if you got some of it working but not all of it, depending on what that feature was, I can give some partial points. But generally it's there or it's not. So the first one is program will ask the user for their name and say hello to them. Right, just what we did here, right? It asks for their name and then says hello. That's 1 point for the code part. The next points that are actually doing the process here. So files are committed to your GitHub repository. It'll show up in assignments in just a second. I gotta hit the save button. There's a button that says file upload. Please don't ever touch it. I wish I could turn it off, but I don't have control over GitHub. So I'm going to show you the right way to do this using a commit and our GitHub Desktop tool. And then the feedback pull request URL is submitted. So I want a specific website turned in, and I'll show you what that one looks like in just a second. So that's 3 points here for that. All right, so now it should be out there under assignments for you. And if you click this link, it's going to do some really cool magic. The GitHub Classrooms is a really handy tool I use. It will automatically create repositories for you, which is nice because you will have access to your repository and I will have access to your repository and no one else will. So I'll be able to see your code and you'll be able to see your code. And GitHub is a place where code is supposed to go. You don't need to email me attachments. You don't need to submit attachments to Desire to Learn. We don't have to deal with any of that nonsense. Everything goes in GitHub. So it should come to a page. You should have a button to say accept the assignment first. I already did it from yesterday. But when you click that link, it should say, do you want to accept the assignment? And you say, yeah, in D2L, you go to Project 0, you can click this GitHub Classroom link.
That's under assignments, right? Okay,
Yep.
I see.
Yep. So it should say, hey, do you want to accept the assignment? If it doesn't, you might not be logged in. Like if I do this in another browser, probably not logged in Firefox. Let me look. Yeah, so it's asking me to sign in. So because you just created the account, you should be logged in. If you're having trouble with that, let me know. Let me try that link again. Yeah, so it wants you to sign in first. If you're not already signed in, sign back in with your account you just made. And then it should say, all right, great, we're going to make you a repository. Please wait a second. You don't even need to count all the way to 5 and just hit refresh again. And then it should come back to this you're ready to go screen. Accept the assignment. And then it'll come up and say, all right, give me, wait just a few seconds while we get it ready.
Oh, okay.
Count 1, 2, 3, and hit refresh. And then it should come back to this you're ready to go page. And it's going to have a link here, github.com/Oakland Community College /CIS 1500 -project 0 -fall 2021 -your username. So mine's Eric Chinesky. I can zoom that in a little, sorry. The URL here. Yours will have your username there, right? But the rest of the URL should be the same. So this is the GitHub repository, Git repository it created for you for the assignment. That's now a link. You can click on that one and it will take you out to this GitHub page. I already have some stuff here. I'm sorry, I did it last night and I didn't make a whole separate one just to do it again. But it should have .github, .git ignore, and readme. You can forget the hello world thing right now. Right? It'll have the rest of it. Right. The next thing we want to do is we want to get the GitHub Desktop client. Now this one's not pre-installed. It needs to install by user, so like having them install it ahead of time would be worthless for me to ask them. So you'd go to a new website. It's desktop.github.com. Desktop.github.com will take you to it. You should get a big fat download link. And this one's a real quick download. So whether or not you're using the virtual machine, you can install this here. It doesn't need admin permissions or anything. Or if you're doing it at home on your personal computer, or if you bring your laptop in, you should be able to install this there as well. It's a free tool for GitHub. You'll download it, install it, and then you'll log in one more time to the GitHub Desktop client. And that will install, and it's called GitHub Desktop. It should be available for you after that one installs. That'll take another minute or so. The desktop client is what we're going to use to interact with GitHub. So this will let us commit our changes and get everything pushed out and synced so that code's online.
So we're signing into github.com.
Yep, you'll sign in again in the GitHub client.
Okay.
Yep.
Authorize.
Yep. Okay, I can do it again in a minute. And then once it's downloaded and installed, there's like 3 different ways to do this to get your repository. I'm fond of this first way I'm going to show you, but any way works. So I like this big old green button here. So on the website for your GitHub repository, your CIS 1500 Project 0 Fall 2021, your name here, the big green code button, if you click that, has an option for Open with GitHub Desktop. That's the one you want to do. So real quick, I got to remove mine. You won't need to do this. I gotta remove it here. Oh, shoot. Hang on, I gotta close mine down. For the GitHub Desktop? When you created a GitHub account? Oh, you can just skip that. Yeah. All right. So this big old green code button, Open with GitHub Desktop.
We get the green one.
So back on the website for your repository. So you clicked the accept assignment button, and then it said, okay, loading your project. And then it says, okay, you're all ready to go. This turned into a link.
Yeah, I've done all that.
So
To get the green.
yeah, and then you click this link here. It will take you to your repository. Okay, so you can go back. You can click that link again from D2L. Grab that link. Yep, just leave it there. Yep, and then come back to the website. Yep. And it's usually easier to start it again from the website here. Did that go back for you? Yep, you can just leave it there. Yep. No, you just leave the client there. It's fine. We're going to go back to the GitHub website now. Yep. Nope. So we'll come back to our repository page here. You probably still have it open in the browser for the big green button. And you say Open with GitHub Desktop. And then you get this option for Clone a Repository should come up. Sorry, the text is a little small here. If you like things in particular places, you're welcome to move it. The default here is a folder called GitHub inside your documents. I recommend you leave it there because that's the default and it's easy. But if you like it somewhere else, you can move it. You can put the folder anywhere you want. All it's going to do is make a folder. So I'm going to say clone. Now what this does is it grabs a copy of the repository. So Git is a distributed source control tool. So anyone working with the repository will have the entire history of that repository. It's just you right now. You're the only one making changes to it, but you can use this tool collaboratively, working with other people to write code, and maybe you'd have a dozen or 2 dozen or 100 people all working on the same code all at once, depending on your organization. So everyone have their own copy. And what we'll do is we will synchronize our local copy with the central copy on github.com. And that's what GitHub makes their money. They offer that central repository that everyone can synchronize with across the world. So once we have the repository cloned, there's 2 helpful shortcuts. They're both in the repository menu. The first one is View on GitHub. If you ever want to get back to that website, View on GitHub is your quick link to get back to, here's my page online for github.com. Okay. So you click the green code button and open with GitHub Desktop, and it should ask you to clone it. Yep. Yeah.
I'm on the desktop and it just says let's get started.
Yep. So come back to the website.
Yeah, but it asked me to like download it again. You see that?
How do you get to this?
So that's through the GitHub Classroom link here
Clone it.
in D2L.
And then instead of doing the thing that opens it,
Yeah, you probably still had it open, but you can go back there if it's not open.
copies that link
And
and
then you put in
yeah, that.
Did it not like it?
So I
Yeah.
cloned mine onto my GitHub Desktop.
Sure. Cool.
It just says no local changes.
Yep, that's perfect.
Okay.
So nothing. So it should say no local changes. You should have your repository name up here in the top left.
Yep.
So the first link was View on GitHub to open the website back up. The second helpful one here is repository Show in Explorer. So Show in Explorer will just open up your File Explorer window right to the folder. Again, I've got a Hello World thing here. I'm going to trash it right now because I'm going to do it again in a second. No, you should already have it cloned, right? Yeah, so yeah, click the button then and open in GitHub Desktop. So it should just open up a file, and you should have a couple things here. If you don't see everything in the File Explorer view, you'll want to go to View and check File Name Extensions and Hidden Items. Usually you want to see those things when we're programming. I can come walk around in just a second. We're almost there. So all it is a folder. So a repository in Git is nothing more than a folder. The Git tool, what it does is it watches the folder for things that go in and things that come out, and watches for things that are modified. So there's a .git hidden folder. Please don't ever touch it. That would break a lot of things. Just leave it alone. It does all the magic behind the scenes in that folder. There's a .github folder. This one is part of the GitHub Classroom workflow. Just leave it alone. It just hangs out there. There's a .git ignore, and there's a readme.md for markdown file. The readme file is just a cute little thing. If you look at your repository page, this is the readme. Right now it says Java template, because this is my Java template. It doesn't really matter what's in there, but you could put some pretty little markdown if you wanted. The git ignore file tells Git not to add certain types of files. The general rule here is that if you can build it, don't put it in source control. So we're going to put the code in itself, but the .class files that get generated, all the Java bytecode stuff, doesn't need to get put in there. Because if I click the run button or the build button, it will generate it for me. So we're only putting in the code itself. So git ignore is really helpful for that. And it also will ignore some of the private files. We're not putting passwords or anything in any of the files, so it's not that important for us right now, but it'll also help us ignore those sort of things. So we just need to know where this folder is. So if you look at the path, it's probably in your documents folder if you didn't change it. And that's important so that when we make a new project, we're going to put it inside this folder. So instead of NetBeans telling NetBeans, hey, I want to put it on my desktop or I want to put it in wherever it was, I'm going to put my new project here so all the files show up in this folder and then Git can watch them. So if I come back to NetBeans, oh, I'm sorry, it's 12 now, shoot. If you got to go, we can go. If you're not done by Wednesday, that's okay. Or if you want to finish it up over the week, that's fine. So don't worry about the due date being before class starts on Wednesday. We can finish it up after if you guys want. So the last thing we need to do is just make a project in this folder. And then Git will say, hey, there's a bunch of new stuff here. So when you go to File, New Project, now it's easy to get a little bit mixed up here because you can have tons of different projects open all at once. Like I already have 2 of them, but that's okay. So I'm going to go File, New Project, Java with Ant, Java application. Now I'm going to call this one Project 0 because that's kind of the assignment here was named Project 0. If you don't call it Project 0, I can still figure it out. It's just whatever is probably helpful for you to track these things. So we're going to change this location. We don't want it to be on my desktop here. I'm going to click on Browse and go find that folder in my Documents, GitHub, CIS 1500, Project 0, Fall 2021, Eric Janeski. So I just pick that folder, and I say Project 0. As long as I put it in that folder, Git's going to go see it. So when I click on Finish, it's going to give me a bunch of stuff here, and then I'll see over in the GitHub Desktop client, we should see a bunch of new stuff in a second, as soon as NetBeans figures out what it's doing. There it goes. So back in the GitHub client, if I look at it now, it says, hey, there's a bunch of stuff changed. So in this Changes section, it says, anything in green is new, anything orange is modified. So it says Git Ignore has added this line. It's really tiny, but it says it's the private folder. So great, we let that change. There's a bunch of NetBeans files, a build, a manifest, a gen project properties, project XML. Then all the way down at the bottom by its sad little lonesome self is the Java file. This is the one we really care about. Everything else there is great. We want it because that's all the NetBeans stuff. Now for Git to be able to track this, we do this thing called a commit. So a commit is a snapshot of everything inside that folder at that point in time. Once you have a commit, you can almost always get back to it. If it's possible to screw them up, but you have to try really, really, really hard to break it. But Git lets you because it's super flexible. And sometimes developers want to do weird things. Generally, it's really frowned upon to delete commits. So to make a commit, you come down here to this summary box. It's the last one down here. And you just give it a summary message. So what is this? This is Project 0 started. You can really type anything you want here. You'll see it again on github.com. And typically organizations have conventions around what you should put here. Some people like to put funny jokes in there. Some people put in WTF. Some people put in R, it's not working, like stupid, frustrating messages. Whatever you want to put in there is fine. And then the big button in blue turns to commit. You can say commit. As soon as we have the commit, your copy of the repository has it, but the central version on github.com doesn't yet. So we're not in sync. So we need to synchronize. So we're going to push our changes. So we get a push button, blue here, push here. You can hit Control P. Any way you want to push, it's going to push and think for a second. And what it's going to do, it's going to send all of those changes from your computer out to github.com. Once we've done that, we can go back to that repository view on GitHub, and you'll see, hey, I've got Project 0 now. So this web view here actually lets you go and open up files and look at them. So I can say, hey, let's open up the Project 0 folder. Okay, let's look up that source Project 0 folder. Here's Project 0.java, and you can see the actual contents of your files. This is super cool. So we can actually see what's inside of it. So if you see the right thing here, I'll be able to see the right thing here. If you don't see your stuff on github.com, I won't be able to see it on github.com. That's why we're going to use this workflow. Right, and then the last little bit is essentially taking what we did here, and you can just copy those couple lines, those 4 lines over, back to your new Project 0. Just make sure you're inside the curly braces here of main. If you paste it in, it's going to try and be really helpful and say, oh, hey, do you want to import java.util.scanner? We'll say, yeah, we don't even have to click that light bulb. It will go and add that line for us. As soon as I save my file, if I come back to GitHub, the Git desktop client is going to say, hey, this file's been changed. They see the little orange, it's been modified. And Git is really good at tracking things down to the individual line that changed. So it said, hey, you used to have line 7 and then line 8 here. Now you have 2 new lines. Everything that's in green is new. Things that are in red were deleted. So, hey, you deleted this line with that comment, and then you put in 8 new lines right here. So you can track things down to the line level changes of our code files. Probably doesn't seem super interesting right now, but as you work on a large software project with multiple people all contributing to that piece of software, you can see who last changed every single line of code. It's phenomenal. Super helpful. So if it breaks, you know who to go blame. One more commit message. We'll say like project 0 done. Commit and push again. And I just want to make sure it's still there. I'm going to come back to the browser real quick and refresh. And now I should see here I've got my actual program. The last thing then to turn in, come back up to the top. There's a little link here for pull requests. You click on pull requests. There's one called feedback. You click on feedback. This URL here, all you have to do is copy paste it into D2L. Actually, I think I screwed it up. Yep, set for file submission again. Text submission. All you need to do is copy paste that link in, and you're good to go when you submit your project. And what is super cool about this feedback link is I can go over here to files changed, and I can see all the individual files. I'm going to scroll on down to find your Java file. And at each individual line, I can leave a note. Right, so at this line, I can say, hey, you know, I'll make fun of Mr. Murak. Murak, name this SC. SC is a terrible, oh, I'm on the wrong line here. This line here, I'll make fun of calling it SC. But I can leave individual notes and messages, or if you're having trouble in one particular part of your code, I can go and look at it online, and I can say, oh, hey, here at line 24, and if I send you a link back, it'll take you right to line 24. And say, this is the line that needs to change. Makes life really easy for code collaboration. This is why professional software companies pay for GitHub services. This sort of stuff is pretty cool. All right, I'm sorry we ran over time here. If you want to finish it up today, great. We got till 1 o'clock till other people show up in the room. If you want to just forget about it and come back and finish it up next week, great. If you want to take it home, call me sometime. We can do a screen sharing session. We can make sure you get it taken care of at home. But the goal is, ideally by Wednesday next week, this is done, and we know the process of using the tools to get our code out there to where I can see it, and you can turn it into D2L. As every other project, we're going to do the exact same thing. You'll have a link, it'll start a new project, you'll have one for project 1, they'll make a new folder. You'll clone the repository, start a new project, put it inside that folder, commit your changes, push your changes. Project 2, clone the folder, make a new project in NetBeans, put it in that repository folder, make your changes, commit the changes, push them, turn in the link. And we'll do that for all the projects.
I have a question.
Yeah. All right, let me just hit the stop button here, and I'll come on and walk around.